Back in the day, it was newsroom policy not to cover bomb scares. The argument was that coverage would only give the perpetrators the attention they craved. But now the media has gone to the other extreme, turning every new threat sent to a school into a major story, even though there's plenty of reason not to take them seriously. Adam has more.
If you live in eastern Massachusetts, chances are a school in your town got a bomb threat this week.
Bomb-sniffing dogs search students' backpacks outside of Methuen Elementary School.
Newton North High School, surrounded by police and fire trucks.
And it's a good bet the media was there. Some of the coverage was downright lurid.
A threatening day in Massachusetts.
Other reports were more thoughtful.
When you instill fear in the entire student body, there's a cost to the quality of life there.
But in almost every story, some key context was missing. Namely, across the country, threats like these have become almost routine.
5 school bomb threats in 2 days.
The coordinated sweep of LA schools for bombs, a massive undertaking.
But even though they can grind entire school systems to a halt and kick the media into high gear, it's hard to think of a single case where the threat turned out to be genuine.
Officers didn't find anything suspicious.
A detail worth considering if this happens again, which it almost certainly will.
By the way, I'm not saying we should go back to the old way, because that was also an era where we didn't report domestic violence. There were just certain categories of things, or suicides. But it's one thing, I think, to notify parents, to let a school community know that something's going on. But then to have this kind of rush and breathless coverage of it, I mean, as you said, Adam, I can't think of a single, including Columbine, that wasn't something where somebody called in advance. I mean, that was a whole different thing where people brought guns to school. But where a bomb threat has been borne out to be real. And, a lot of these hoaxes were, typos that came through, emails that were just so obviously, concocted by
emails with
students.
Typos, there were robocalls, there were live calls,
so
threats of shooting.
I think really the onus is on us, the media, because we whip these things in before you know it. And then I think the law enforcement community, they're obligated to get the kids out there with their backpacks, and once it reaches that level, they can't treat it and they can't dismiss it.
I do wonder, though, I take the point about the media's responsibility there, but I think there's also a significant responsibility on the part of school districts and law enforcement to be smart about understanding a real threat from a non-real threat. Now, I'm not a law enforcement officer. I would not be the right person to do that. But I thought it was very telling when, not too long ago, when the Los Angeles School District shut down all of its schools for an entire day, the second largest school district in the country. The exact same threats were sent to the New York School District, and New York said, you know what, this is not credible. We're not going to shut everything down. And again, I'm not the law enforcement person who's going to make that distinction, but apparently New York saw the same piece of evidence and interpreted it differently. And I wonder if, I can understand why, I can have sympathy for the media, if you're seeing an entire school district shut down all of its schools, or you're seeing, this army of backpacks laid out and all the kids disrupted, and on any given day in America, 1 out of every 4 Americans is in a school. They're either a student or a teacher. What happens there has big implications for the audiences of these news programs. I get the media angle, but I really think it's up to, it feels like an output of the zero tolerance movement, the idea that every small incident must be completely amped up, and that's the only way that you can avoid criticism. I wonder if that same idea can be taken to these threats.
I would give the Los Angeles school officials a pass because it was in the immediate aftermath of San Bernardino, and it's understandable that they were jumpy and perhaps didn't react the way they normally would. This is a real tough one, and I mean, I guess my basic reaction would be maybe the media ought to try not reporting these for a while, but I'm not sure.
Certainly not in the way that they are.
Certainly not in the way that they are. There's all kinds of things we don't report.
Right, exactly.
Because they're not newsworthy.
Right.
And maybe these aren't newsworthy. It's certainly, these are copycat threats at this point. The threats keep being made because the media is reporting them. Just back off for a while and see what happens.
Well, what the problem is, as we all are not saying, is that there's the one time where you don't cover it or you don't follow up on it, and it really is something. So I would say, with regard to New York and Los Angeles, New York has a lot more experience being alert and ready for a terrorism threat. So they are looking for certain things. They're a little bit more up on it than LA was. But if that's your kid at a school, how do you tell a parent, well, we might not respond to it. We might not cover it. I don't know. I don't think we have to cover it. I agree with you. But at the same time, I don't know if law enforcement is going there, it's likely we're going to cover it. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
so it starts a domino effect.
But
whether
you have
you
to
like
put
it
it,
or
I mean,
not.
I understand going there, I understand, but putting it on the air and this, I don't know.
Well,
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess my response to that would be, I don't think we have to report on it, but I do think school officials ought to be letting the families know.
Right,
Say, hey, we
right.
got this
Sure.
threat.
Absolutely.
We don't think it's credible.
Yeah.
We're going to have school. And, let parents decide what to do with that information.
I don't envy any school administrator or law enforcement member who has to make this call because, as you pointed out, things like Sandy Hook and San Bernardino do happen, and you would hate to be the person who decided this wasn't credible and then it turned into something. That being said, I don't have any issue with news organizations reporting it, but my problem, looking back at some of this coverage, is we tend to report it as if this has never happened before. If you looked at the coverage of the 15 schools or however many it was that got threats in Massachusetts, you would not have been reminded of the LA situation. You wouldn't have been reminded of all the threats going back into 2015. And if you could contextualize it, maybe give some numbers.
Yeah,
Eric
like there's never been
Levinson
one
at
of these that turned out to be
Boston.com
real.
actually did a piece in which he found that the FBI doesn't even track the number of threats of this sort that are made. Maybe we should start, and then we can highlight that, how we get nearly 1,000 of these in a given year or whatever, and they tend not to pan out. I think all that would be helpful. It doesn't need to be a brand new, oh my gosh, look what's happening.
Exactly.
And also the WHDH graphic, awful. The flames coming out the side, tense day, disturbing stuff. That's ridiculous.
Exactly.